Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about the state of the 2026 Senate races, and it is rapidly changing. Now, the electorates of each party, the Democratic and Republican parties, has really changed over the past few years in a way that does benefit the Democrats in off-year elections. Of course, 2022 shocked us all. Democrats were expected to lose badly under Biden, and they shocked everyone by gaining a Senate seat, barely losing the House of Representatives. And that is because, in an unprecedented way that nobody was really expecting, the Democrats were able to turn out these more high propensity voters, meaning voters who are more in tune with American politics, more involved, and more likely to turn out in off-year elections when the presidential election, the most important, isn't on the ballot. So looking ahead now to 2026, when you don't even have Biden in office, right? Biden was unpopular. That's why Republicans were expected to win by so much in 2022. And now it's the flip side. Now you have Trump in office. So unpopular. We already have results from special elections that show just absolutely insanely massive shifts towards the Democratic Party. The first congressional district of Florida, they voted for Matt Gaetz in 2024 by 32 percentage points. In this special election, the Republican won by 14%. 14, 57 to 42, or 15 when you round. So it has been quite a ride for the Democratic Party in these few special elections that really does give the party hope, even with a low approval rating nationwide. So now looking ahead to 2026, it should get even worse for the Republican Party, honestly. Remember, this was last Tuesday. So this was before Trump even put the tariffs into place. This was before the stock market has completely tanked, right? Like 15 points since he enacted his quote unquote liberation day, right? Where you put in place the tariffs. This was before everything involving the stock market and tariffs. So this is going to be an awful economy in the near future because apparently they're not going to take them back. Trump is set on enacting these tariffs. This is almost certainly going to cause a recession. So looking ahead to 2026, it does seem like a very positive national environment for the Democratic Party. They can come back from 2024. So with that being said, let's get into this prediction. We'll start with our safe Republican states since now they are the incumbent party. It's going to be Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, South Dakota. Nebraska is interesting, and we'll get to that. Kansas is also interesting. We'll get to that. Oklahoma, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, sorry, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, these states that we never really talk about on a national level. These are the base, safe states, 15% margins or higher for the Republican Party. And then as for the Democrats, they have some, but far, far less. And when you look at the map, it's not a very good map for the Democrats. It's not awful. It's not as bad as 2024, but it certainly is not very good. Not many safe states for the party here. They do have Delaware, and they have Rhode Island, and they have Massachusetts. They also have Dick Durbin in Illinois. I don't know if he's running again. He probably will be, but you've got him there. Minnesota, I heard Mike Lindell might run, or maybe that was governor. I don't know. But that one could be safe, but probably not, looking at 2024. Oregon, you've got Jeff Merkley running again. He's very popular. He should win by a safe margin. You have got, I think it's Michael Bennett up, or no, sorry, it's John Hickenlooper, I think, in Colorado. I could be wrong in that. Let me just check. Two very generic Democratic senators. Yeah, you got John Hickenlooper in Colorado. In New Mexico, I think it's Ben Ray Lujan. Yeah, Ben Ray Lujan. He should be running again. That one wouldn't quite be safe, I don't think, but Hickenlooper is very popular. He would be a safe margin. So that's it. So it's not an awful map for the Democrats for the baseline. It's 43 to 40. I'm just checking up on South Carolina. Lindsey Graham is running again. But remember, 2020, he didn't do very well, but it was still a 10-point margin, and Democrats put a lot of money into this race for Benjamin Harrison. And with all things considered, I don't even think that South Carolina would be a safe state for the Republican here if Democrats are able to field a strong enough candidate. So that one would fall under a likely margin. And then you have two states that I left off on before, Nebraska and Kansas. And I said these were interesting. Nebraska, especially, because you have Dan Osborne, who is almost certainly going to run again, the independent. Now we'll see if the Democrats once again endorse him like they did in 2024. Could go either way. If they do, this race could be somewhat close, but Pete Ricketts is not Deb Fisher. Deb Fisher was a very weak candidate. I mean, historically weak candidate. Um, and Pete Ricketts should be able, as a former governor, should be able to way outperform Deb Fisher. But still, Dan Osborne is a labor union leader, an independent, just a strong candidate overall. Now in Kansas, you have the Democratic governor, Laura Kelly, who is term limited. So, oh, okay, she declined. Never mind. I guess Laura Kelly is not running for Kansas. That would make it a safe seat for Roger Marshall. So that leaves us with 14 seats left. Let's go into our likely Democratic states. Of course, you got New Jersey. New Jersey, I'm just putting it as a baseline as a safe because, of course, it shocked everyone in 2024 when they how do I get past elections? When they voted for Kamala Harris by 6 points, closer than anyone could have possibly expected. Measly 6 points. So in 2024, you have Cory Booker running again. He is popular, obviously stronger than Kamala Harris, and even Andy Kim. I'm sure he's stronger than. But it is a rapidly trending right state, and you still have a strong number of Republicans turn out. So New Jersey's likely. In New Hampshire, you have Chris Pappas, the representative, the U.S. representative, running in the Democratic primary. He will almost certainly be the nominee. When it comes to the Republicans, no one has declared yet. And it all comes down to if Chris Sununu runs. I don't want to say it is Chris Sununu's seat for the taking if he wants it, but almost in that characterization. Chris Sununu would be heavily favored to win. He is the governor, or the former governor, incredibly popular. Scott Brown might also run, very moderate. He was a senator from Massachusetts. I don't see it though. New Hampshire people wouldn't want to vote for a Massachusetts senator. Now we have Virginia. Mark Warner, I believe, is running again. I don't know why he wouldn't be. A potential candidate, most likely going to run again. So Virginia is a likely state. Now, we do have a couple more likely Republican states. Of course, Alaska. That one, Mary Peltola might run for. But you do have Dan Sullivan running for re-election. And then you have Texas, which is John Cornyn's seat. Now, on a side note, John Cornyn might actually get primaried by Ken Paxton. A poll came out, Paxton versus John Cornyn. Paxton absolutely crushed John Cornyn in that primary. But either way, it's probably likely. Paxton, I bet, would make it a bit more competitive, but not a really strong Democrat anymore left in the field in Texas. So that's most likely going to be likely. If not, then safe. And then Florida, you have I think it's Ashley Moody, who was appointed by DeSantis to serve the remainder of Rubio's term, who's now the Secretary of State. And Ashley Moody is running for re-election. That one should be likely as well. Another 10-point margin. Republicans, again, now have just a lock on Florida. Now you also have New Mexico. This was Ben Ray Lujan's seat, as I said before. He should win by a likely margin. And then I was very iffy because if Trump does really enact these tariffs, then it will be these Midwestern states hurt the most. Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, where farming is the big industry. It would absolutely demolish the farmers. I don't think that they would turn out for Republican candidates in 2026. So looking at the Iowa seat, you do have Joni Ernst. This race was somewhat competitive in the 2020 race. Last time she was on the ballot, she won by 6.5%. And there is a good field of Democrats in Iowa. You've got Rob Sand, of course, he would be phenomenally strong candidate. Right now, I would keep it at a likely margin, though, far, I believe, from safe. It all depends on if these tariffs stay in place. So that leaves us with 6 competitive seats, or actually make that 5. You've got Ohio, where there is talk of Sherrod Brown running again, but but you've got John Husted, who was appointed by Mike DeWine to serve the remainder of why am I blanking? Why? Oh, JD Vance, obviously, to serve the remainder of JD Vance's term. He's running for re-election. That one should be a likely margin. I'd be surprised if it wasn't. And then you have Minnesota. Now Minnesota, it's isn't it Klobuchar? Or no, was Klobuchar up in 2022? No, it's not Klobuchar. You've got Peggy Flanagan. Oh yeah, of course. So you've got the incumbent here, Tina Smith, who is not running for re-election. She won in 2020 by 5 percentage points. Really underperformance of Joe Biden even. Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor, I think would be a relatively strong candidate. She really excites Democrats. That's what we know. And again, this should be a blue wave year from everything we are seeing so far with Trump's approval rating dropping dramatically as we speak. This should be an absolute blue wave year. So a Democratic state like Minnesota that Kamala Harris won, that should stay in the Democrats column. Now that leaves us with our four competitive seats: Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Maine. Democrats hold Michigan and Georgia. Republicans hold North Carolina and Maine. Surprisingly, if you didn't know, Susan Collins, the moderate Republican from Maine. So let's start in Michigan. This is Gary Peters' seat. He is retiring, and you do have one announced candidate here in the Democratic side. That is Mallory McMorrow. She is the state senator, and I believe like the leader of the state Senate Democrats. On the Republican side, she's most likely to be nominee, by the way. On the Republican side, Mike Rogers is going to run again. You might have Tudor Dixon running. That'd be interesting because she would probably lose by a lot again, just like 2022. Right now, comparing the fields, I would expect that Michigan is lean Democrat. I just feel that Mallory McMorrow is a very strong, very uniting figure, much stronger than Mike Rogers, who already lost an election. And again, this all comes down to the national environment, which is, with how things are on track to go, should be a heavily Democratic favored year. John Ossoff, new numbers came out in his race, $11 million pulled in. But this does all hinge on whether or not Brian Kemp runs. Brian Kemp is the very popular Republican governor of Georgia. If he does challenge Ossoff for the Senate seat, then this would be a lot closer and probably a Republican victory. There has been some talk of Kemp, actually, opting, privately opting not to. So that would be a good thing for the Democratic Party, for John Ossoff for sure. So that gives Democrats 2 more seats. Now you have North Carolina and Maine. In North Carolina, this is another one where it all hinges on if the governor runs, or in this case, former governor, where you have the former Democratic governor, Roy Cooper, extremely popular. He seems to want to run. While it seems like Brian Kemp doesn't want to run, it looks like Roy Cooper is going to run for senator of North Carolina. And then on top of that, favoring the Democratic Party further, Tom Tillis might get primaried out of his seat, and he is incredibly unpopular. They did an approval rating poll for Tom Tillis. First of all, he lost the Republican primary by a lot, and his approval ratings were were just absolutely tanked. So all in all, you have such a weak Republican here, and if Roy Cooper runs, strongest possible Democrats they could recruit. Newly left, extremely popular governor. I think that North Carolina is a tilt Democrat margin right now, less than 1%. So now we have Maine. Maine. Susan Collins shocked the nation in 2020 when every poll had her down, and she ended up winning by 8.5%. On the same ballot, Biden won by 8. Maine is one of the last holdouts of partisanship. They can still vote for one party on the Senate level, and on the same ballot vote the other party for president. That is very rare, as partisanship is only growing. And again, I said it was a holdout because partisanship will eventually take Maine. This will not last forever. West Virginia was once extremely bipartisan. They have slowly but surely become a solidly Republican state. In the same way, Maine is becoming more and more Democratic. Voters across the country are just becoming more and more partisan. And as we saw in 2022, Democrats are going to turn out. And Republicans, you need Republicans. Susan Collins will need Republicans to turn out in 2026. Honestly, being on the same ballot as the presidential election might have helped Susan Collins because at least Republicans were turning out. But with a recession, with a bad economy, and Susan Collins, who Trump himself calls a rhino who is extremely, extremely moderate, why would Republicans turn out for Susan Collins? She would have to so heavily rely on Democratic support, and with growing partisanship, I don't see it. I don't even think it matters who the Democrats run right now. I think Susan Collins is finally toast. So, you have Democrats flip 2 seats, Maine and North Carolina, hold Georgia and Michigan, and they still do not reclaim the Senate. It's 49-51. Republicans, after their strong performance in 2024, keep the Senate. But it is possible for the Democrats. Or sorry, no, it's not. I was thinking they could get 50, but they would need 51. That just shows you how bad it is for the Democratic Party right now in the Senate. If Democrats want to take control of the Senate, this is how bad it is. They would their path to victory would probably be flipping Iowa, and honestly, oh, they can't even use Dan Osborne in Nebraska since he's independent. It would honestly be Iowa and I guess Ohio. And that is obviously such a narrow path. So that's where things stand right now. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I should be doing more in the near future, and I will see you all next time.